lord of his pack. A short story by James Waugh. Never take a man's hand, son, King Archibald Greymane said, his strong frame now a muddled silhouette against the fading glow of twilight. It is always better to stand tall on your own. It is what separates the great from the meek. His son, Gen, all of 7 years old, pulled his outstretched hand back. He was sitting cross-legged on the cool stones of the recently built fortifications. The ramparts were impressive testaments to the power of the nation, but to Gen, perhaps not nearly as impressive as the man standing in front of him. Do you think all of this was built by asking the other kingdoms to lift us up? The industrial towers of Gilneas City loomed below. It was a magnificent sight, for sure. Large tiled roofs poised over cobblestone streets, shops, factories, and billowing smoke. It was truly a city with an eye toward the future, toward the potential of its people. When I was a young prince, as you are today, my father would not have dreamed of this, but I did dream, and I struck out on my own, and look at us now. All of it done without taking the hands of those in Stormwind, or begging for aid from those in Lordaeron. And we certainly did not grovel to the long-eared arrogance of those demi-humans in Quel'Thalas. Gen had heard the stories of Gilneas in the time before Archibald had taken the crown. It was certainly a nation of nowhere near the power it would rise to. Now get up, boy, get up, and don't ask me to help you again. Because all of this will be yours, and when it is, you must be ready. "'Tis yours, father. Gilneas will always be yours." Archibald smiled, his tone softening. "No, son. Princes grow into kings, and days fade into nights. This is the way of things. Come now, I dare say I can feel a chill in the air. We should feast. I do believe it's roast boar tonight." Gen quickly pulled himself to his feet. Succulent swift thistle boar, made by who Gen believed was the finest chef in all of Azeroth, was his favorite thing beneath the 2 moons. "Do you think there'll be sauced apples with dinner, father?" "If you want sauced apples, boy, you can have them. Such is also the way of kings and their progeny." With that, the two made their way down the ramparts. The last hues of daylight screamed across the bruised sky. The Night Elven transport ship rocked in the increasingly rough seas. With each nauseating sway, the ancient wooden boards that first formed the ship's imposing hull millennia ago let out warping creaks. In a musty cabin within, King Gen Greymane opened his eyes. The memory of his youth was still festering, still haunting him for reasons he did not quite understand. It wasn't the only one. Streams of memory flowed into his mind these days, drowning his waking thoughts as if trying to convey some message he could not grasp. Memory was mysterious that way, its own kind of magic, perhaps stranger and more powerful than the mighty arcane powers the hooded Magi of Dalaran were so adept at wielding. He started to sit up, but pain forced him to ease back down onto the bedding. His body ached from the recent battle, the battle for his kingdom, the battle he had lost. He breathed into the discomfort and closed his eyes. Images came rushing back, a goblet clanking against a stone floor, Gilnean banners hanging proudly from a wall, his now dead son, Liam, bleeding from his mouth and cradled in Gen's arms. "Let me assist you, Lord Greymane. You have been through much these troubled days." Gen's eyes sprung open. Before him was a night elf's purple hand reaching out. Talar Oaktalon's words were spoken softly, but Gen knew better than to mistake their gentility for weakness. He was tall and adorned with ornate leather armor and robes made of silken cloth of a color Gen hadn't ever seen before, a blue or maybe a green. He couldn't tell which. Beautiful plumage hung in tassels from a large staff in his other hand. Gen stared at the hand offered to him for the briefest of moments. "This old king needs not your help or anyone else's to leave a bed, Talar Oaktalon. Of that, I am still capable." He brought himself to his feet, embracing the wave of agony that splashed his back. Talar noticed Gen's wincing and tried not to show his frustration before he spoke again. "I come with more poor news, honorable king. You are needed on the deck. Our danger persists." The torchlight flickered, bending shadows across the granite walls of Lordaeron's royal guest quarters. Gen and several of the most influential Gilnean nobles had made the trip to answer King Terenas' emergency summoning of the Lords of Azeroth. Now it had only been hours since they'd learned about the Orcish horde's conquering of Stormwind, about the dire times that might lie ahead. After a polite dinner with the various kings, Gen had retired to his quarters to consult with his fellow countrymen. It hadn't taken long for the arguments to begin. "These cursed green mongrels could very well be at our doorstep if we do not act, Lord Greymane. We should join this alliance. We must do what we can before these monsters tear through the other kingdom's lands and into our own." Lord Crowley was a smart man, younger than Gen, and a little less polished in the finer points of politics, but many believed he was a noble with a bright future. He made his plea to the Lord, seated at the table with a fervor not often seen except from Greymane himself. "Indeed, Crowley, I do understand your fears here, I do, but these orcs, as they're called, have come nowhere near our lands. Not a drop of Gilnean blood has been shed. My heart bleeds for Stormwind, for young Prince Varian and this hero Lothar, it truly does. But should I commit my people to a similar fate? Is even one Gilnean life worth sacrificing for a cause that does not affect him?" Gen was passionate. His orc menace was something new and strange, but he wasn't altogether certain that this was a threat that his industrious people would have a problem putting in check on their own. The orcs were just brutes after all, demi-beings, monsters. "Lord, as you've described, the other nations seem eager to assist. If Trollbane, Perinold, and the rest partake, I do not know how we can rightfully call ourselves neighbors or friends if we do not join them." Crowley continued. Gen understood why he was so beloved. His words were spoken with acute vigor. There was no political angles at play, just a man concerned for his fellow man. Gen respected him no matter how misguided he was. Crowley couldn't possibly understand the folly of his sympathy, what it could actually lead to. He did not see that his own people, above all else, needed to be accounted for first. He was young and newer among the nobility. "My father never thought that the future of our people was bound to which way Lordaeron, Stromgarde, and Alterac leaned. Some are strong, Lord Crowley, and some are weak. It is the way of things. We Gilneans are strong, and Gilneans must watch over our own pack first and foremost." Gen had them now. He could see the nodding heads. He could see the nobles imagining the first reports back from the front lines, the cries of mothers who had lost sons. He could see them actually weighing the cost in life that Terenas and Lothar's request would bear. But then a measured voice arose from the back. "On the other hand, my lord, perhaps to stay in the good graces of our sister kingdoms, ensuring that future trade and tariffs remain stable, we should send a small force, one to show them what even the slightest addition of the Gilnean military can do. We have our standing militia prepared to assault peripheral enemies. Let us use it." His name was Godfrey. Gen trusted his counsel, but was always suspicious about his ambitions. Godfrey's notion was not motivated by empathy as Crowley's was. It was a smart political play that ensured notoriety for Godfrey, the commander of that standing militia. But he had a point. Trade and tariffs did provide the kingdom with much revenue, and endangering these boons wouldn't be prudent. "It is a path that does have merit, my lord," Baron Ashbury added. Ashbury was one of Gen's most trusted friends. Gen had grown up with him. His father, Lord Ashbury I, had helped Archibald build the nation up, and Archibald had always told Gen to trust in the Ashbury's fidelity to the crown. "I will consider this course, Godfrey." Gen and Talar hurried up the winding staircase to the deck. A sense of urgency was in the air. Even so, Gen was amazed at how ornate these elven vessels were. So much artisanry crafted into every functional detail. The sheer size of the ship and its multiple levels was beyond even the ingenuity of his own people. "It seems Gilneans are quite stubborn, Lord Greymane." Talar's frustrations had increased over the last day or so. "It is a quality we have always admired about ourselves, good druid." "Yes, I see that." "You have been indeed courteous, Talar, but I would rather you speak as you truly feel. There has been a sense of great suspicion from you since we first met. Please, do me the honor of being out with it." "I apologize if I seem so... Azeroth is in dire peril, your majesty. It is time that I fear we may not see through unless we stay truly bound. You are a ruler who chose to segregate your entire kingdom from the rest of the continent. You are a king who refused requests for aid over the years. You see, I am a druid. I believe in the interconnectivity of all things. It is the way nature is shaped, an ecosystem. These choices are foreign to me. I owe much to you and your people, Talar. Perhaps our differences are great, but do not let them divide us." Talar bowed his head gently. They certainly shall not. Archdruid Stormrage believes that you and your people will be an important asset to the Alliance. I would not question his wisdom. An asset to the Alliance? Gen was taken aback. We owe your people a great debt, this is true, but I cannot offer you or your leader any assurances as to whether or not we can rightfully participate in the business of your noble alliance as an asset of any import. This is unfortunate to hear, but these are political matters. Our business is to survive this day. The daylight outside was scarce. Shards of dulled illumination peeked through the clouds, only to be devoured by the dark horizon. The fresh salt air filled Gen's nose, and loud gulls squawked dreadfully in the distance. Dozens of violet humanoids busied themselves about, doing all they could to prepare their ship for what certainly appeared to be a massive storm. But among the purple he could see his own people, Pinkskin, and then of course the Worgen, lupine beastmen and women unwilling to adhere to the requests of their saviors. As you can see, King, they intend to partake in preparations and ignore the orders given. They have refused my call for all non-deckhands to go below. Near the bow, Gen could see two sentinels, beautiful warrior women, trying to pull the Worgen away from working on the sail lines. It was not going well. The Wolfman was pushing a third Night Elf sailor back, infuriated at being yanked away. You must understand that the mission we were sent on was not originally to bring the remaining populace of a nation back to Darnassus. It was to assist with the Worgen. We are already stretched thin. Look out there. This is no mere squall. We may be facing our greatest obstacle yet, Talar continued. Fair enough, Talar. There were several more Night Elven ships in the ocean surrounding the vessel. Gen knew that on one of them, the Elun's Radiants, were his wife Maya and his daughter Tess, his family. It was strange for him now to think about family and not include his son. It hurt more than any physical pain he'd endured his entire life. It hurt more than losing a kingdom. The scouts return! A lookout on the crow's nest shouted, pointing towards the bleak sky. 3 black smudges veered away from the storm-ridden gloom ahead. They came into focus slowly, no longer smudges, but giant storm crows flying at breakneck speeds towards Talar, their loud squawking a cacophony of urgency, and it seemed to Gen, fear. Then the massive crows morphed. Gen was still getting used to seeing this transformation. He had heard that druidism was practiced among some of Gilnean's agrarian folk, but he hadn't been exposed to it until recently. The bird shapes twisted and jerked, wrenching their anatomies into more natural forms, those of Keldarai druids, 2 males and 1 female. Panic was written across each of their faces. We must order the ships to take immediate action, the female druid said. Storm, it is like none we've ever seen. Waves 3 times the size of giants come with it. The sea boils with the frames of broken ships, one of the males said. He was trying with all of his will to maintain composure, but his terror was apparent. It is as I had feared, Talar said. Go now, hurry, warn the captains. A ship on its own will not survive. Tell them that we must form a flotilla immediately. Without hesitation, the druids contorted their Stormcrow forms before scattering out towards the other vessels. Gen could see the oceans rolling and black rain clouds smothering the sky not far ahead. He was not from seafaring stock, but the situation, even to his limited nautical knowledge, looked severe. This cursed black dragon still haunts us, Talar said. It was the most emotional Gen had seen him in the days since they had barely escaped from Gilneas. This cataclysm. The world still shakes. These storms have ripped apart the seas. Deathwing the Destroyer is a monster, no doubt, but to imagine that beast caused this great cataclysm. The aftershocks are still lingering because of him. I just believe it, Gen Greymane. As I have said, we find ourselves in the most bleak of times. If we survive this, the worries of Gilneas are only the start. Now, get your people below decks. My crew must work with precision, no distractions. Send orders for your people to comply on all vessels. Talar had already begun waving his arm to the sailors, perched on the bridge above. We can assist, Talar. My people are capable. They will want to take part in the saving of their own hides. There is no time to argue. I would prefer for their hides, as you say, not to end up on the Great Sea's floor as food for the Naga. In this affair, on our vessels, Gilneas must cooperate. Sheets of rain skated in. Tethers of liquid now bore down hard on the struggling crew. The sea began to rise. Gen realized that this was no moment or place for his people to dispute. This was a situation where they would have to give their destinies over to the Kaldorei. The winds howled. Seemingly out of nowhere, a massive wave crashed into the hull, tipping the strong vessel and sending the humans, night elves, and Worgen teetering across the deck. Gen slipped, then gripped one of the mast lines hard, doing everything in his power to stay on his toes. This storm, this tsunami had hit faster than even the scouts had predicted. It was hard to see much in front of him now. He just saw the slush of rain. He could hear the shouts of his people. He could hear them arguing with the night elves. Thrusting his body forward, Gen began to bark his own orders to his people. End of part 1.